Okay, so we're gonna be talking about the mysterious Chaldean oracles, which today only survive in fragments. But much of what we can glean from the remnants, they are intended to be revelations from the gods that inform us that the world is dualistic, much like we see in Zoroastrianism, with the upper realm of the intelligibles, consisting of spirit and so forth. But before we fully jump in, I want to focus in, however, on the word Chaldeans. I mean, why are they called Chaldean oracles? Now, the term was used by the Greeks since the 4th century BCE to describe those who were from Babylon or who were associated with Babylon and the surrounding areas. And so the word Chaldea comes from the word Chaldu, which is the Assyrian name for the land between Babylon and the Persian Gulf, which is fascinating, right? Now, the people who lived in this area, these Chaldeans, were not actually native to Mesopotamia. They migrated here from around the 10th or first part of the 9th century BCE, and they come from the Levant region, which is, of course, today Palestine and Israel and Syria and Lebanon. And they spoke a West Semitic language sometime during the 850s, BCE. The Assyrian king Shalmaneser III first mentions them in Mesopotamia. But soon, what will happen is under the Assyrians and then the Neo-Babylonians, the Chaldeans didn't exist as a distinct ethnic group, but was applied to a certain kind of wisdom, especially under the Neo-Babylonians, so during the 500s BCE. So in fact, they are known as to be astronomers and, as well as astrologists. They were soothsayers. And in fact, the term Chaldean is actually mentioned in the book of Daniel. And in this context, it is a caste of wise men, right? So in many cases, we see in the context of the prophet Daniel, the word Chaldean seems to be kind of closely related to the word magic. In fact, when they mention the magician by the name of Balthazar under Nebuchadnezzar II, he was known as the Lord of Incantations and the interpreter of dreams. By the time of the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, the Chaldeans were then compared to the Egyptian priests. And so now we're getting to the idea of the exotic, right? As for astrology, the term Chaldeans becomes a synonym for stellar and planetary divination for the Greeks and Romans. So if you're talking about astrology, that is the connection. They'll use that word. Around 280 BCE, the eminent Chaldean astrologer and priest of Bel Marduk, his name is Boreas, he moved from his home in Babylon to the Greek island of Kos and established there a school of astrology for Greek astrologists. He wrote many works, especially, of course, known for his treatise on astrology. He did have this one strange conventions. I just want to mention this, and then I'll kind of pass on this way. In his form of astrology, he believed that the moment of conception, as opposed to the moment of birth, was the best way to make an accurate horoscope and identify what sign of the zodiac one is actually under. So it was very controversial. So once again, of course, how do you determine, exactly when the conception took place, right? It can happen, under many days. But anyway, I'm just bringing that up. So there is a sense of exotica. And so there is this belief, intrinsic belief, that the Chaldean oracles come from the ancient East. They are exotic. And it is true that there happens to be a Zoroastrian idea that's infused with it. In fact, in many cases, the Chaldean Oracles is kind of a hodgepodge between Middle Platonism, Neo-Pythagoreanism, and you're going to throw in some Zoroastrianism in there, a little mystery religions, and, you know, a little Stoicism, and woohoo, there you have it, the Chaldean Oracles. So it is a mixture, but there is an immediate cost. What started out, supposedly it was the oracles themselves were created by the two Julians. So there's two Julians who lived during the 2nd century CE. They were recorded to live under Marcus Aurelius. So in fact, there's a special episode that we'll mention that occurred during the reign of Marcus Aurelius, which is between 161 to 180. So one was known as Julian the Chaldean, and then his son, Julian the Theurgist. There's one story that they were fighting, though, a certain enemy tribe known as the Quadi. But supposedly, these experts of using the Chaldean oracles were able to save the day. What had happened was, of course, this is known as the rain miracle, is that their troops were surrounded on all sides by the enemy, and they're slowly drying out. It was so hot, and they're baking in their armor. And so what happens, supposedly, is that there's this invocation using the Chaldean arts, and the storm clouds arrived, and it rained, and it saved the troops. This supposedly happened. Well, I mean, it did happen. There was, in fact, this episode is commemorated on the column of Marcus Aurelius. You can see that today in Rome. It occurred in 172, but everybody takes credit for this miracle. In fact, you even have the Tertullian gave the Christians the credit for it. So there you have it. Well, what happens now is that then Julian the Chaldean wrote a book on daemons, which unfortunately does not exist anymore. So that's too bad. We've lost that. And other mystery poems. But even though that these are the supposed two founders of this belief system, I do want to mention that most of those who looked at these works did believe they go back earlier. Porphyry mentions the fact that they are before the two Julians, for example. And also we see that we have a mention of Iamblichus, under the Assyrian ancestral doctrines. It's mentioned that. So, you know, so there we have that as well. So also. I just want to make an aside. Somebody still has their microphone on, so it's bleeding over into the talk. So anyway, so what happens now is the Chaldean oracles appeared directly at the right time, at the right place. For Middle Platonism at that time is going through a merging with Zoroastrian ideas coming from the East. So this radical dualistic system is starting to move in. You're going to have this blending, as I mentioned before. Now, with this blending, you have three different aspects of the triad, so to speak, of Chaldean beliefs. First of all, you're going to have what is called the paternal intellect, which we will talk about in a little bit. So that's the first thing that we have. We also have what is known as the second intellect. And finally, we have third, that which is known as the cosmic soul. Okay, so when it comes to this, now this triad is believed to be immanent within all things. Proclus notes that all things are governed and subsist in this triad, right? In fact, the paternal intellect is described as being essence, or another word that they use, and this is an important word, is the word ousia. So omicron, upsilon, sigma, iota, alpha. Now, what is ousia? So the word ousia means being, as in a state of being. So the paternal intellect has always been there. It is outside of the generative realm. It is beyond. It is out there. That is how do I put this? It is out there, residing in an infinite way, beyond all comprehension, beyond all understanding. Right. So it is to be. Right. It is essence. Right. Now, the problem is the word ousia has always been a controversial word. It subsists within itself. It is always there. It is always in a state of presence, right? And it doesn't translate very well into Latin. In fact, what will happen is the word ousia, which kind of means intrinsic being, when it's translated over into Latin, it becomes substantia. And the word substantia is a little vague, very vague, in fact. So, so we kind of have to stick with the Greeks on this one. Also, this grand paternal intellect is known as the monad. It is the one. The second intellect, okay, is known as, it is the operation or the actuality. It is anything which is currently happening, right? The second intellect, it thinks its own contents, which are thoughts, and it's equated to Platonic ideas or forms, right? So again, so you have this idea of it emanates. It is the activation. It would be an equivalent to the Christian idea of the logos, the word which is spoken that comes forth, right, from the Father. In fact, there's lots of parallels between the Chaldean as well as the Neoplatonist triad and the Christian Trinity. And I do want to add this, that the Christian Trinity is absolutely informed by these notions. The Greek words that will be coming about to understand the Christian ideas at the Council of Nicaea, or the Council of Constantinople, or the Council of Ephesus, or Chalcedon, they are all using this kind of language that is shared by Middle Platonists as well as the Chaldean arts. Just throwing that one out there. Okay, so the second part again is the second intellect, or it's the second torch, the second fire. The third is the cosmic soul. The cosmic soul, which is life, which is power, right? They will use a special word, and that is dunamis. We get the word dynamite from this particular word, right? So it is potential, it is capacity, it is power, it is dynamic, it is also energeia, or energy, right? So this is how this activates. So you have the three, got it? So you got the first, the paternal intellect. The second is the second intellect, and the third is the cosmic soul. Okay. Now, when we talk about the second intellect, I do want to mention that the second intellect, as I said before, it is much like the logos that we see in Christianity. It also is an equivalent to the demiurge that we understand within Platonism. So you have this idea that of Plato, that you have this divine craftsman that creates all things, right? So this is the second part that's moving down. Now, what is interesting is the paternal intellect is potential, and yet it resides, as I said before, in silence. And there is this deep paternal depth to it all. And it radiates forth this energy. This energy is described as circulating. It is spiraling, and it's moving forth through the second intellect as well as the cosmic soul. So theurgists, the art of theurgy, theurgists assert that he is a god and is described as circulating or even spiraling. He is the one who is the energizing spiral force that moves on down into creation. He does himself subsist beyond himself. He is, of course, the monad that emanates all of the universe. This paternal intellect, is the all. He is one, all at the same time, okay, all put together. Now, I want to go here. There is this absolute idea of oneness and allness in the Chaldean oracles, that this paternal intellect moves through all of creation, is immanent within it. And yet there's this monolithic presence. It's not necessarily our understanding of monotheism, because it permeates and emanates many different kinds of aspects of deity. It is also, I don't want to get things mixed up, it's also not necessarily male. It transcends, it moves beyond that which is masculine and feminine. In fact, that's going to be extremely important, because this oneness emanates both aspects. In fact, I'm not going to get too much ahead of myself, but I'll just say this, is that what I find is interesting is, even though you got this paternal intellect, follow me, and you got this second intellect, which is masculine, the third is the cosmic soul, which is absolutely feminine, absolutely feminine. And you're thinking, okay, so you have the paternal intellect, and then you have the second intellect, and then after that, you have the cosmic soul. No, in the Chaldean Oracles is different. You have the paternal intellect, which is actually transcends the gender notions we'll talk about in a little bit, and it splits into two and has a cosmic soul half, and it has a second intellect half. And what happens is the second intellect impregnates the cosmic soul. So they're both created or emanating at the same time. So it's not like paternal, second, and cosmic soul. It is, they branch off to one another, because they mirror that which is in the paternal intellect, which is not necessarily paternal. It's just, in this sense, it's just words. But this idea is very strong, and it does seem to go back before the two founders, supposedly during the 2nd century. We see connections that go back to Ad. The idea of Ad, A-D, we spell it. Ad, of course, is a Babylonian word. It means simply one. Ad, one. And this idea of one is also understood as once beyond. What will happen then in Babylonian, and then of course later on the Chaldean Oracles, is you're going to have that which is known as Ad, 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 which means one, one. And that could be understood as twice beyond. I'll show you, right there it is. So you got Ad, right? And then you have Ad, Ad, which is one, one, which is twice beyond. So what will happen is you have the eternal aspects of the one, which is Ad, and then the second intellect will be the Ad, Ad, which is the twice beyond. And this goes back to an earlier Greek Babylonian root, which I think is really interesting because then it becomes incorporated within these mysteries. So the Chaldean oracles do have some direct influence coming from the Middle East. I want to make that very clear. Of course, you're going to have the god who is Adad in the Middle Eastern belief systems, right? Amongst the Babylonians, as well as those in Syria. In fact, Adad was the preeminent deity of many in Syria, and was the equivalent of the Greek Zeus. Also, Adu is connected to Marduk. So there you have it. Okay, so we know that the concept is that this deity, this paternal intellect, is beyond words, but it doubles. It goes from odd to odd. So it is doubling. It is duplicating. It is a confluence of expansion. I think that's kind of interesting, but that's just me. So what will happen now is the second intellect, as I said before, was created at the same time as the cosmic soul. They emanated out of the one at the same time. But the second intellect, its job is a bridge between the worlds. The bridge between the world of, well, obviously the monad, and of course the world of the soul that is below it. And so there you have it. Okay, now let's talk about, I know you guys are waiting for this, but I have to get through the spiritual architecture. And we're finally there. So we reached the point of Hecate. That's right. So what happens? Let's talk about the third part of the Chaldean deity. This is the cosmic soul. Now, the Chaldean oracles identify the cosmic soul as Hecate. She is understood to be the power that brings together and keeps apart the first and second transcendent fires. So she is like Sophia. And so she mediates within the world soul. Now, while Hecate is the spouse of the mind, so she is understood as the spouse, as, in a sense, the wife of the second intellect. She is also the mother of the mind. You guys got that? So she is the wife or the consort or the spouse of the second intellect, but she also is the mother of the second intellect. You see how these energy is flowing back and forth, the sense of equality, right? So Hecate is the cosmic soul and is the source of all power, with the paternal father filling her womb. And you're thinking, but shouldn't it be the second intellect? No, this energy is still coming from the monad that's beyond. I know, pretty interesting. The paternal intellect was the one that mixed the second intellect with the cosmic soul and then proceeds into the material realm. Okay, so this is how this works. Now, I will bring up Proclus so you can hear it for yourself. After the paternal conception, the soul resides, a heat animating all things, for he placed the intelligible in the soul, and the soul in dull body. Even so, the Father of gods and men placed them in us. Wow, there is pretty direct. Also, who first sprang from the mind, clothing the one fire with the other fire, binding them together, that he might mingle the fountainous craters while preserving unsullied the brilliance of his own fire. And so you have that. So the world soul then is the power of the material world. So once these energies come together, the material world comes together as well. She is understood as the mistress of life, and she fills up the many recesses of the bosom of the world. Now, again, the cosmic soul that is Hecate is focused upon the activity that is known as insouling. And before I go there, I just want to make sure you see, so Hecate is many things, right? So Hecate is a cosmic soul. She is the power. She is the mistress of life. She is the great mother, and she is the flower of fire. She's also called Rhea as well. So she has many different titles. What we're going to be talking about is something pretty exciting. It's known as the hollows beneath her ribs. So I'll try to explain this here. So basically what happens is the cosmic soul as Hecate is focused upon the activity of insouling. Proclus says, about the hollows beneath the ribs, you see this here, of her right side, take a look, there spouts full bursting forth the fountain of the primal soul, all at once insouling light, fire, ether, and worlds. Okay, so again, she is depicted as a woman, and you have this insouling energy, this insouling power that is pouring forth from her right side. Well, what about her left side? Her left side. Well, on her left side, Hecate is a fountain of virtue, remaining entirely within and not sending forth its pure virginity. So what you have here is a fascinating idea energetically. So you have Hecate, who is insouling the world, insouling creation. She is putting everything together, and that is coming forth from her on one side of herself, right? So that's coming out of her right side. So it's moving down. There's an aspect that's reaching down, but there's an aspect of her that is holding within. It's holding within. So you have this idea of reaching out and holding within, preserving that energy as well. So you have this idea of sending forth, holding, sending forth, holding, which is fascinating from an energetic standpoint of view. In many cases, this will be the potential energy that will be stored up so that one can return back up the way they came. Now you got it, right? So while you have the full essence of expansion on one side, emanating forth, you also have the idea of retraction on the other side. Retraction. So she does both, bringing us down and putting us back up again. Okay, so lots of fun. So she has the power of life-giving, right? They also describe that her back side was where boundless nature happens to hang, right? In fact, every limb has this power of giving life, or is just life in itself. Even her hair. In fact, I'll read that little passage here. Described as the mother of life, or all life, they say her hair seems like a mane of light, a bristling piercingly. That's very poetic. I tell you, Chaldean Oracles are very poetic. So her hair seems like a mane, right, of light, a bristling piercingly. So even her hair has this energy that is moving from her, and of course through her to create this life. In many ways, Hecate is as much like a Kybele of Asia Minor. So in fact, Damascus says that he says that her crown is a wall crown, a turreted diadem of Kybele. In fact, and he calls this the walls of fire that's crowned upon her. So she has not only this hair that bristles forth, full of this energy, but she wears this crown, right? This crown. Furthermore, this great mother, as called Rhea as well, We have a mention also that it says that the Father's powers flow into her countless bosoms. We'll talk more about these bosoms in a little bit, right? But moves forth into her bosoms and pours forth on every kind of thing, birth and death, and continues, that spins like to a wheel. So what is this? What is going on here? So what will happen is that she is also the divine nutrix, that this energy pours through her, but is also stored in her bosoms. It's stored there, and it is life-giving for those who need it, right? It stores it up. Now, many scholars have noticed that there could be connections with a goddess by the name of Artemis of the Ephesians. In fact, this Hecate of the Chaldean Oracles is described as being girded below in a manner that you see of the cult image identified with Artemis of the Ephesians. It is also, this girded below can be connected to the idea of virginity. Also, the Chaldean Oracles, much like, also Hecate of the Chaldean Oracles, much like Artemis of the Ephesians, is connected with bees, as in bzz, those kind of bees. So Hecate is power. She is this great power of that powers the intellect. Her ideas are described as gushing out, humming from the Father, and then gathers in abundance in this flower of fire. Wow. And then the source of both virtues and souls. So Hecate is also known as the flower of fire. She receives this energy. In fact, one quote goes, "Flower of fire has donned a girdle," that she is the spring virgin. Now, concerning Hecate becoming associated with the cosmic soul, we understand that the idea is that the soul is this intermediary place, and it is this place that is in between, but it is actualizing as the material realm. It is becoming materiality. So Hecate is sowing the material realm. She's making it into the physical realm from the spiritual realm, as empowered, of course, and impregnated by the ideas that come from the second intellect. And so she is the one that sows forth. Okay, so now we move into another mystery. Now, this is the big one. So I got to get ready for this one here. You have, if I can find it here, that which is known as the depths. Now, the depths, what are the depths? The depths are often known, we talked about this, but we'll bring it up. Depths are known as the bosoms. They're known as the gulfs. They're also known as the vortices. They're known as the aeons. And this is my favorite. They're known as the whirl swirls. I'm serious. They're really called the whirl swirls. So what is this? Well, basically, here we go. The paternal intellect, the paternal depth. Actually, let's go back a little bit. In fact, I want to go ahead and freewheel this a little bit because it is not easy. So basically, we have the depths, and you have that what is known as the paternal depth, and you have that which is called the maternal depth. So you have these two kinds of depths. The paternal depths is what impregnates matter. Got it? But the maternal depths is matter. Got it? So it vivifies matter to make it emanate forth so that creation happens. Now, obviously, you're going to have who puts these two together. What it is, the second intellect, as well as the cosmic soul. They're sewing this work together. But let's talk about the mother depths and the maternal depths. I'm going to go ahead and quote from the oracles, right? So she is the energizer, or the workwoman, and the fourth giver of life-bringing fire. This energy of life is within Hecate's womb. In fact, Proclus states she fills the life-giving bosom or womb of Hecate. It is this energy. This statement is the mother's self-reflection in the sensible universe. Furthermore, this energy flows fresh into the wombs of all things, right? And somebody just mentioned that this sounds very much like the Shakti that we see in Shiva, and that would be a good example of that. And it does sound a lot like concepts that one has learned in Tantra as well as in yoga. And you're going to see this here represented within the Chaldean Oracles. So she is the great holder of things. So this is this maternal energy. This is this maternal depths. What is the paternal or father depths? Well, this is the power of the Father's mind that bestows mind to both all sources and upon all principles, both power to understand and ever bite upon a never tiring pivot. So you're like, well, okay, please tell me this in English. Sure, I can do this. So here he goes. It's the blueprints. All right, so through the paternal intellect to the second intellect, it has the blueprints of what is possible. You guys got this? The blueprints. It's within it. And then with its blueprints, it impregnates, right, this feminine energy, which is the material, and presses on it. And as a result, it becomes life. Now, I don't know about you, but this seems almost sounds biological, does it not? Right? You know, the energy of course, the sperm and the egg and going forth. It looks like there's something going on. There's this idea of masculine and feminine energies that are articulated in a way that has the sense of production. So yeah, you have the blueprints. This is and there's blueprints, and then of course the impregnation. So there you have it. Yes, definitely, Taffy. It's the idea of DNA with the sewing of the materials. And one has to wonder, they didn't know how this works in those days. And and you kind of wonder about the how intuitive this idea really is, going back 2,000 years or even more in many cases. So these energies work together. Now, what will happen from here is that Hecate then forms also, and I brought this up earlier, what's known as the limit. You guys who know the Kabbalah, you know, the line of the Holy Spirit, you know, yeah, well, the same idea right here. She's also the limit. She is a separator between the intelligible world above and the material world below. And she acts very much like this, I don't know, like this membrane between these two. The oracles proclaim as follows: for from him leap forth both thunderings exhortable and fire flash receiving bosoms of the all fiery radiance of Father begotten Hecate, and the by which the flower of fire and mighty breath beyond the fiery poles is girt. What does that mean? I'll say it again. For from him, that's of course the paternal intellect, from him leap forth both thunderings exorable and the fire flash receiving bosoms of the all fiery radiance of Father begotten Hecate, and that by which the flower of fire and mighty breath beyond the fiery poles of Gert. So what is the thundering? What is this thundering thing going on? Thundering, these are the creative utterances of the Father, that the universe is created by a spoken word. And this has the feeling, you sense this, of a Semitic background, right? The roaring of thunder, Hadad, right? This ancient Semitic idea of the thundering ones, the spoken words of God creating all things. So you have that there. But, right, you have the bosoms. What are the bosoms? The bosoms are hivakate. These are the receptive vortices. This is the mother side of things. So yet you have this really fascinating idea, and is that the Chaldean oracles have this very strange construction when it comes to their triune understandings, because you think to yourself, okay, so traditionally, even within a Middle Platonist idea, Neoplatonism, you have this idea of course, all right, you got even Plato earlier, you have this idea of the monad, the one, which is the paternal intellect. And then of course, the next thing is you have the second intellect, which could be the logos and so forth. And then you have the cosmic soul, right? And then what they'll do is they'll place labels or words on this, for the paternal intellect, we'll call that father, got it. For the second intellect, what should we call it? Father, son. Okay, so father, son. And then the next level down is the feminine aspect. And so, of course, we have this idea as cosmic soul and spirit. So you have this descending concept, this conception going this way. However, if anybody of you are interested in the ancient Middle East, I want to bring up one more thing. In the ancient Middle East, you have this trinity, which is Father, Mother, and Son. Father, Mother, and Son. And what's interesting about the Chaldean oracles is it kind of jumps into that area. It kind of jumps into, well, sometimes, Hecate is, the wife of the second intellect. Sometimes she's his mother. So you're feeling this interesting nudge between the two, right? So father and mother, and then son. And this is how things are operating. The son is that which girds or limits or separates in many cases. So I think, again, this for me is fascinating, finding these little anomalies along the way. And thank you for letting me talk about it, because I never hear about this typically. So you're hearing new stuff, right? Okay, so this is also, she forms a separation between the realm of knowing and of course, special, that beyond knowledge. Okay, so what follows after this is the emanation of ideas. So ideas as leaping forth from the paternal intellect and on the way through. I do have an ancient quote talking about this, that the Father's mind forth bubbled, conceiving with his will in all its prime ideas that can take upon themselves all forms. And from one source, they say, taking flight sprang forth. For from the Father was both will and end. In addition, these were made to differentiate from the Gnostic fire, allotted into different knowing modes. For the world of many forms, the king laid out the intellectual plan or type, not subject unto change. There again, we're back to the blueprint, right? So what will happen is they're all forging this idea together, and you're thinking, okay, well, we got it. So we understand how it works. Is that it? No. Love. Excuse me. Love. Wait. Stop. We want cold intellect. What's this love? Yeah, the Chaldean oracles, it deals with love. This will not be the first time you're going to hear love involved. You can see this is a different belief than what you'd expect. There's this idea known as the bond of divine love. Now they will use In this case, they use the word philia, which means affectionate regard and friendship. But the word can be expanded. It is this natural force which unites discordant elements and movements. It is that which brings all things together, this mutual attraction. Now, I know you're thinking eros, but not in this context. We'll talk about eros. That's coming up later on. There's both kinds, but this is philia. So this love is the bond of union between all things. All things are held together by love. Wow. Let's keep reading here. For the self-begotten one, the Father mind, perceiving his own works, sewed into all love's bond, that with his fire he overmastered all, so that all might continue loving on for endless time, and that these weavings of the Father's Gnostic light might never fail. With this love, too, it is the elements of the cosmos are able to keep running. Wow, what? So love holds us together. This affection. It is the marriage of the elements coming together in this perpetual transmutation, right? Which reminds me of Heraclitus of Ephesus, right? The elements, in a sense, married themselves, earth, air, fire, water, into one another. In fact, one magical papyri says as follows: Hail unto thee, O thou beginning, and thou end of nature not can move. Hail unto thee, thou vortex of liturgy, unwearable of nature's elements, talking about things all coming together. So with the bond of love, continues, who leapt forth first, clothed around with fire, his fellows bound to him, that he might mix in the mixing bowls original by pouring in the flour of his own fire. So you're going to have the idea of mixing bowls. So the reason why these elements mix to create everything in nature is because of this mutual attraction, this need for connection, this need for order, but also this idea of love that has an emotional feel to it. It is meant to be emotional. It's not as cold stoic as you see in other beliefs. And this is what gave the Chaldean Oracles kind of a bit of life, because it became very emotional at times. It's not distant. It's close. So there you have it. So the mixing bowl of elements, having mingled the spark of soul with the two, with mind and breath divine, to them he added a third, pure love, the august master binding all. Once again, I'm just quoting verbatim fragments of the Chaldean Oracles. I figure you probably want to hear it for yourself, as opposed to just hearing secondary sources. So love is called in the Chaldean Oracles the hidden one, who secretly doth cause to spread among all souls the fire that cannot be attained by contemplation. I'll read this again. True love is also, the hidden one. So love is the hidden one, who secretly doth cause to spread among all souls the fire that cannot be attained by contemplation. That there is a way to attain the hidden secrets, a revelation, the idea of epiphany beyond just intellect. You have heart involved. You have love involved. Proclus talks about this deep love, right? That the oracles are filled with this love and is united with faith as well as truth. Whoa. And again, you didn't expect this to happen, right? So the idea that God is love, or the monad is love, if you're the oracles, the Chaldean Oracles, you're going, yep, that's our God of love. That's us. Yeah, we worship a God of love, but it's not just a God, it's the gods, it permeates beyond, all through it. Now, next, of course, you have the seven firmaments, moving on down, right? And the firmaments are connected to the seven spheres. There we go. And we get some interesting words here. So I'm going to go through them here. There are seven that descend down. They describe them as the spiral. They also describe them as a chain of beads that kind of work them down. And the first section only has one, which is the sun. And this is known as Epherian. That's the first round. It only has one. Right? Epherian. The second one is ethereal. And it has three of the firmaments that will be echoed beyond further as the planets, but they're not planets, they're the ideas. And finally, the third, which there are also three, because it's called the Hylic. And so how this works is just like this. So you have the seven firmaments, and you have the three areas, and like beads, they kind of descend through it. Okay, well, there you have it. Look at the seven spheres, right? These seven spheres, again, are not to be confounded with the seven material planets, although they are physical representations of them. So they kind of move through the system here. And it's described as a chain or a coil of seven that descends down, creating the material realm. And then, of course, further down, then you have a reflection of what's known as the true sun. And then beyond that, you're going to have the moon. And then moving further down, you have what's called the shell of the cosmic egg. So we're going into this architecture, right? This, of course, this egg. It is like an eggshell, right? And then finally, after going there, you have what's called the physical cosmos. Now you're ready for another mystery? How does this energy move through the physical universe? How does this work? Are you ready? All right. Well, there happens to be these mysterious centers. These mysterious centers that are described as channels or pipes. In fact, what happens is that we take a look, and it turns out that you have that moves through the various layers to, of course, obviously, the material universe. You have these mystical channels that are filled with fire. But there's more to it. And so they'll describe, first of all, there is the source, which is they call the fountain. And then it follows a spring. And then it goes into channels. And then it goes into streams. It goes from there. So what are these? These openings. The best way to describe it would be almost like, I'm thinking of blood vessels, and so it moves through the physical universe and it feeds us. Okay, it feeds us. It goes into the Hylic realm. These conduits of power. It descends through these energy vessels, and it goes all the way, it is said, to the center of the earth. Now, these vortices, these places, these sources are in specific locations. So I know we're thinking many cases, ley lines, right, and so forth. Well, they had that same idea. There's certain places where these channels were believed to move through. in a locational sense. Okay? And these are where the power is vested. Now, if you're good at theurgist, doing your special mystical ways, what you can do is through doing various rites, is that you can move these channels of energy to you. See how that works? So you do a ritual, and it's in many cases they're described as whirling and almost like tornadoes, and you can move them or draw them to you. So even though they can be static in specific locations, and there were locations throughout the ancient world where they felt this energy was connected to most of these portals that run through the various three realms, the Ethereum all the way down to the Hylic, but you can also manipulate or move them to you. So let it come to you. So this is how this works. So there it is. So the mysterious centers. So you see it there. And you can see here that fire descends through them, sources of light and sources of life. Okay. Of course, you have that which is the rulers of the sensible world, which are principles, rulerships, sovereignties. There's 12 of them, and they're the ones who ordered this universe. So like the 12 gods, the 12 deities. So that's part of this. And then we move into this word, Ingus. All right, so we're now on the threshold of even a greater mystery. Although I think the vortices is a fascinating one as in and of itself, but here we go. What is this? Okay, Ingus. Ingus, and I'm going to take my time on this one because this is really important when it comes, there's a lot here. In fact, so much to unpack with Ingus. I'll just give you a quick little view there. Look at that. That's all different ways of understanding this concept, which is central to the Chaldean Oracles, but is often misunderstood. What is an Ingus? The Ingus, they are messengers or thoughts of God, or the monad, the one beyond. They are much like the demons mentioned by Plato, acting as these messengers. In fact, Proclus doesn't call them messengers; he calls them ferrymen. As in crossing over to the other side. Ingus, he says that the Ingus have a name that is appropriate to ferrymen, and that they have the ability of ferrymen, and that they transmit all things from the noetic sphere to the material sphere and back again. So they are, in a sense, they are those who send the messages down, and they're ones who bring the messages back the other direction. So, and yes, at times they will follow these veins that work through, that we talked about, that work through the material realm that comes from higher up, but they also can go anywhere they please. So they are the communicators, but they start out in the Ethereum realm and they move on down. So Ingus, what does the word Ingus mean? Well, it derives from the word inks, and this is a kind of bird that's like a wryneck, and according to ancient commentators, they talked about the fact that this bird was bound to a wheel by a sorcerer, and then this wheel spun around as a means of attracting an unfaithful lover. And then what will happen is eventually the wheel itself, as opposed to the bird, will be called an inks. Got it? And they call it the inks wheel. Then what will happen is Physalis and others will talk about the fact that that this will then be connected to an instrument of Hecate. Okay, so I'm going to read Physalis's quote. He says, Hecate's top is a golden ball. It is a golden ball formed around a sapphire, whirled around by means of a raw hide thong, and characters engraved all over it. I'm still reading him. Whirling it, the theurgists used to make invocations, and they were accustomed to call these tops ingus. There's the quote. So these are like magical wheels that are used for invocation that will then be connected to these spirits, to these messengers, to these ferrymen as a means of communication. So you can see what you have to do ritualistically speaking. I guess if you, it kind of makes you worried about, being left alone to spin your wheels. Sorry. watch out for the ingus, because if you're spinning your wheels, you never know what's going to be coming, right? Because the ingus could be invocated, bringing some kind of message. Yeah. The ingus, of course, developed even a deeper meaning as time goes on. The ingus, as messengers, become this binding force between humanity and the gods. They, as I said, are identified as the thoughts of the Father. They are also connected to what are known as intellect supports. What are these? These are what holds the universe together, right here. So now what will happen is, I'm going to go another level. Here we go. Is that the thoughts of the Father. So the ingus, who are these messengers, who are like daemons, who go back and forth above and below. They send messages forth. They are brought forward by these wheels that have the same name, right? You got that so far. But also, each one of them has a magical name, a vocus mysticae, right? And so not only do you spin the wheel when you call them, you have to know their name. All have a specific name. And you got to know those names. Now, of course, obviously the theurgists will know all those names, so they know what to call. It's just like, dialing a phone number. But that's exactly how this works. You want details? I'm giving you details, right? So you have to utter the words properly, or they will not arrive. Okay, now also, they are connected to, they're known to have a whirling or rushing sound. So when they arrive, you suddenly hear this whirling noise, this rushing noise. And when they arrive, as you're doing the invocation with your wheel and making sure you know the exact words, they are also known to have a voice that you can hear. And apparently, in many cases, they have a feminine voice, because the ingus are connected to sirens. They will call them sirens. So they'll say this about them. They shared with them an ability to attract or form a bond between invoker and evoked through this sound. And Pythagoras and Plato will also connect this beautiful sound that they make with the music of the spheres, but also understood as sirens, as riding upon the cosmic spheres. Singing of these sirens produce this cosmic harmony. So pretty complicated context, right? So this ingus, once again, they're the messengers. But as messengers, they do quite a bit more than that. They produce sound. They are connected to these syllables. There is one source that talks about the fact that they will use, in some cases, they'll use the 7 Greek vowels to bring them forth, and that or they also connect to the 24 letters of the Greek alphabet. Yet these ingus also have an earlier source. In fact, Philostratus says that the Magi, who are the priests of Zoroastrianism, called the ingus the tongues of God. tongues of God. Now, the ingus were used, of course, for theurgy. Now, what is a theurgy? I'll just give a definition here. Basically, a theurgist, what they do is they invoke, well, actually quite a few things they do, right? They use both ritual as well as philosophy to bring forth a unification of themselves with the divine. In fact, the word theurgy means divine working. And so we do they do focus on the performance of rituals. They have this intention of invoking the actions or evoking the presence of one or more of the gods, especially, as I said, as the goal of achieving a unification. They will definitely use magic too. So the theurgist, this is what they do. And they're associated not only with the Chaldean Oracles, but they're associated with Middle Platonism. Now, moving right along, these ingus are also companions of Hecate. That's right, they're the special companions. So as I said before, one of the goals of the Chaldean theurgist was to have his soul released from this world and be unified with the divine while the body was still alive, right? So Hecate was able to help men take their first steps towards this theurgical ascension of the soul by sending down the secret knowledge stored in her in the form of these ingus. So in a sense, Hecate becomes this savior figure, comparable in many ways to the Gnostic Redeemer. So you have to constantly repeat these theurgic practices to purify the soul for its eventual release from fate, when of course the theurgist body will die. So you keep doing these rituals with these ingus in order to achieve this henosis, to achieve this mystical union. Now, as I said, typically, Hecate will send the ingus down, and that you'll commune with that force to purify you, typically. However, sometimes Hecate appears directly, and we have a description of that. So what happens is Hecate, she will suddenly appear in the dark sky. Sometimes she will appear in the sky with a full moon that is quite bright. And then you will hear this whirling sound moving through, and the clouds will churn, right? And then you'll hear this voice, much like a siren, that is singing in the air. And then they describe lightning. That's lightning shooting forth in this dark sky. The cohort of ingus are sometimes identified with that lightning, that they embody that lightning, that energy that shoots forth from above. And then after that, the goddess will descend, dressed, they say, in full armor and bearing weapons. Now, these weapons are metaphors for theurgic knowledge. So they all have symbols. And the knowledge, of course, was aimed at the theurgist who needed it for the ascension of his soul. So if you're really, if you've been doing these rituals for a while, with these ingus going back and forth, your soul is being purified. When Hecate shows up, woohoo, okay, you're in for it now, right? So now the theurgist will typically do various things to not enter into this kind of confusion. I will say this too. I told you they're messengers, these ingus, but they will sometimes call specifically a god or a goddess, not necessarily Hecate. And to help that along, help them focus, they will make a statue of that deity as they do their rites. So they will put, now sometimes they will also put together stones as well as herbs and aromatics that connect to that deity. Once again, it's all about dialing the right number. Now you're thinking to yourself, wait a second, this is really complicated for a theurgist, because you got to make sure you're dialing, you got to make sure that you figure out how to connect it with an ingus, and then you got to make sure you have your message down and who you're talking to. So which deity you're talking to, and then you have a whole bunch of rituals that are dealing with this. This could be indeed a full-time job. And that's why it was very complicated. Yes, Ali mentions Iamblichus. Iamblichus is one of those that I'm quoting here when it comes to the labyrinth of what you have to do. Okay, so we got the ingus, we got that in mind, right? Let's move on to another, and those are known as the connectors. So the connectors, they're called the synocase. Yeah, the connectors. What are the synocase? The synocase, like the ingus, they issue forth from the Father. What they do, their purpose is to harmonize the universe. It is also to protect the universe. They're the ones who hold it together. They're the ones who stabilize it. They are the protective force. They are the police force of the universe. They're the guardians. So they just make sure everything is balanced in form, you know. So be careful there. They work very closely with the various hierarchies, but they keep everything. They're the bureaucrats. Okay, so from there, right, the bureaucrats, they deal with, now finally you have the teletarchs. You get the teletarchs, and these are the masters of initiation. There's three of them. You got the Ephraim teletarch. That's the one in charge of the realm, of the Ephraim realm, and its special attribute is love. But this is eros love. The second is the ethereal teletarch, and the second region below is connected with truth. And then finally, you have the hylic, or the material teletarch, and this is the one in charge of faith as an attribute. Now, already you should be wondering, wait, faith, truth, and love? This sounds like the Bible. And yet it's not necessarily connected. So what is going on here? So the teletarchs, they are associated with the Chaldean virtues, and the first one is, in order for you to even get started moving up as a theurgist, you have to have faith. You have to have, in fact, Proclus said that faith is a supreme virtue, as it is faith alone as a theurgic power which permits one to unify. You know, it is faith to believe that you can even have the possibility of unifying with the one. And then what happens is that as you move through faith, then of course what is revealed to you is hope, and then finally love, which in this case is eros. And so you become one. You move through and you become one with the deity. Now, what happens now in regards to the hypostasis of the soul, you know, it has a mediating and ascending role. When the soul falls into the bodies, it is forced to become a slave to the bodies, right? But still, there is a non-fallen aspect of your soul that still partakes within the intelligible world above. And it is still destined to reach its place of origin. And so you can have this special connection. But the problem is that there's a lot of temptation to close off that higher aspect of yourself, the higher sense of you. And because of that, you could become more mundane. We'll go more into more detail in a few moments. And so, in a sense, the soul will become abandoned to what's called a herd existence. You just kind of blend out, right? So, by the way, as you move through, as I mentioned, you have, of course, through the system, of course, I said we have the demiurge, right? You move further down, and you got the higher demons, and then you got human souls, and then you got the elementary demons. This is fiery, aerial, ethereal, aquatic, and then you got your evil demons. Yeah, evil demons are there. And the thing is that the soul can ascend. But did you know that the Chaldean Oracles, unlike many other beliefs, unlike them, has the soul can descend and keep descending and keep descending. And if you're not careful, there is this idea of Tartarus, that the soul can be closed up to the depths and be with those who are evil, be with those who are the demons, the evil demons, not the good demons, but the evil ones. So humanity basically has three aspects of soul. Here we go. First of all, you have the divine soul, which is the intelligible realm. You have the rational soul, which is the intellect. And you have the irrational soul, which is passionate, but subject very much to emotions. So here they are. That's the division right there. Okay, so now concerning the intelligible or the divine soul, the oracles taught that it is a bright fire, which by the power of the Father remaineth immortal and is a mistress of life. Its power may be dimly apprehended through this regenerate fantasy, and when the sphere of the intellect has ceased to respond to the images of the passionate nature, then of course you can connect with it. Now, concerning the rational soul, the Chaldeans taught that it was possible for it to assimilate itself unto the divinity on one hand, or the irrational soul on the other hand. So the intellect soul. Okay, so the divine soul is eternal. The divine soul is eternal. The intellect soul could be or may not be. Below that is the material soul, the irrational soul. Now that is only temporary. That's as long as this bodily existence happens, or maybe going through various bodily existences, because in many cases you'll have this idea of reincarnation, going from body to body. So if you affiliate yourself more with the higher thoughts, your intellect soul associates more with the higher thoughts, which is obviously the divine soul, what will happen is eventually you'll be purified and you are released to the higher levels. That's it. You're out of here, right? But if you identify more and more with the irrational soul, with the animal self, with the emotional self, not just emotional, because emotions are not bad. Hello, love, anybody? But in a negative emotional sense, this limiting aspects. Then what happens is that you will become more and more temporal. You'll become more and more mundane, and then slowly you'll just kind of slip into the mire, and that's it. and that's temporary. So apparently your time in Tartarus will have a limit as well. Okay, so there you have it. You also, of course, have another idea, because this temporal soul is ruled by what's called the ethers. The ethers are the elements, which are, of course, earth, air, fire, water. And these are connected to the 12 signs of the zodiac. The 12 signs of the zodiac. So here in this idea is that what will happen is, in this ethereal realm of the elements, your lower soul, your physical soul, your soul that is irrational, is subject to the inclinations of the zodiac. Now, that could be good and that could be bad, because not necessarily the irrational soul is always bad. Okay, I'll make that very clear. But it can be good or bad. But that's the realm of the zodiac, and it has special controls over you. Now, when it comes to the intellect aspect, which is that middle soul right there, you have a choice. You have a choice whether you're going to follow that zodiac aspect, which you can, because it may be good for you. It may be something that you want. Maybe it is something that you need. So it's not necessarily bad. But you can also choose to not follow that and go and coincide with your oversoul, your higher soul, and transcend it. You have that. So there you have. So once again, the 12 signs of the zodiac are not necessarily bad, but if you're more caught up in your intellect soul with your irrational soul down below, you're going to be more apt to follow its inclinations or possibilities wherever it goes. And that may not be good. But if you are more connected to the higher divine soul, then you can be free of that. Now, another thing I want to bring up is there's so much here. Actually, I want to read this here. And these ethers were stimulated or endowed with a certain kind of vibration by their presidents, by their planets, and these were suspended in orderly disposed zones. Also, each one of these zodiac, so all 12 of them, each one not only has a specific vibration that can be sensed or understood, that you can imitate in order to connect with it, but it also has a certain color that you can flash or show in order to communicate. And also each has their own sound. But you know that. So you can connect with the planetary powers or those beings connected to each of the zodiac houses by a series of vibrations and sounds, as well as showing colors. You notice how you use all your senses there. That kind of makes sense, right? Now, moving on. But what you can do, here we go. I'm going to tell you some more mystery. Ready? Okay. You can also use those rituals to transcend the zodiac, to even change what the possibility is if you use the right sound, the right vibration, the right color. The Chaldeans were very much like many other groups, like the Assyrians or the Egyptians. They had this really a high degree of appreciation of colors, and so bright colors give recognition to these powers, these energies, these perceptions. One thing that you have to do, also I'm giving you more clues, is that if you want to achieve something using theurgic magic, what you do is you identify yourself with the object of contemplation of what you want. You identify yourself with the object of contemplation. And so an outer ritual, in what you look like, an outer display, you may reveal yourself wearing the color that you need, or connecting with the sound that is needed. So there you have it. What is the goal? The goal, of course, is always to be free of this terrestrial world. That's always the goal. That's always the plan, right? And so how do you do that? Well, of course, I'm kind of telling you exactly how they do it. But the other thing you need to do is return to more of a simple life as well. There is this idea of karma too. There's this other notion I want to bring up that's not talked about a lot. The oracles say, enlarge not thy destiny, and urge us to explore, this is a quote, explore the river of the soul, so that although you have become a servant to body, you may again rise to the order from which you descended, joining works to sacred reason, joining works, actions to sacred reason. So yes, you should explore life. You should enjoy the journey. But at the same time, this spirit of inquiry is also all about how we get back. Don't be, as is often said, a sleeper. The Chaldean oracles teach that there is sewed within our souls sacred symbols that are for us to decipher. But how do you unlock these sacred symbols? How do you reach these sacred symbols that are deeply invested within ourselves? And that is, of course, using the theurgic arts. Otherwise, they remain dormant. They remain asleep. And they talk about the fact that we are like sleepers. We are like drunk with this world. But finally, after we're doing the various rituals, in order to, we're calling out on the Ingus through theurgy, right? Remember, theurgy is never done on demand. It's always done by request. So you don't demand these things. You open up yourself to these possibilities. You show these symbols, and you do these actions, and you say these words, right, in order to invite them to come, but you cannot demand them to come. Now, you do have certain power, but at the same time, you have to recognize that power comes from above through these vortices in and of itself. But let's just say you're doing that. You're doing the rituals. You're purifying yourself. You're having more of a simple mindset. You're focusing in on your divine soul. What happens now is what's called the flower of the mind. It's used by many kinds of mystics. It's the idea that your mind opens up. It opens up like a flower that takes in the light of the sun. We ourselves don't do it. The idea is we're supposed to open up like a flower and receive the divine light that radiates from above. And at that moment, everything changes, because subject and object no longer make any sense. The subject and object become one. We are released, and yet we go through this sense of transcendence. We arrive at the threshold of what is called the end of understanding. Now, what is that? So I do have, of course, a quote. Here we go. About the flower of the mind. For should thou turn thy mind inwards on it and understand it as understanding something, thou shalt not understand it. For that there is a power of the mind's prime that shines forth in all directions, flashing with intellectual rays. Yet in good sooth, thou should not strive with vehemence to understand the end of understanding, nor even with the wide extended flame of wide extended mind that measures all things, except that end of understanding only. Indeed, there is no need of strain in understanding this, but thou shouldst have the vision of thy soul in purity, turn from aught else, so as to make the mind empty of all other things, attentive to that end, in order that thou mayst learn the end of understanding, for it subsists beyond the mind. So we enter into a emptying, a cleansing of ourselves, and so we become this empty chalice to hold in this divine light that transforms us, or we become this flower that receives this light. We become one with the divine. And we should not seek to understand it, because the moment we seek to understand it, the moment we try to cognitize it, is the moment where we lose it. So don't think about it. Just simply be in the aspect of being. And then from there, you will be released. And where do you go? Of course, you join the realm above. You become part of the universe. There are different possibilities of destination. In some cases, some sound more material, while others sound pretty metaphysical, where you just simply become part of this harmony, this vast harmony of voices. Remember I talked about all the sounds, the vast harmony or chorus of voices singing above, becoming one with the higher plane, the ethereum realm beyond. Or, of course, there is a possibility of maybe some form of distinct existence. The idea is freedom from this realm, and sounds a lot like Buddhism to me, doesn't it? You can see that. Well, so furthermore, for some mystical union of it all. And there's another little bit I want to bring up, and that is silence. In order for you to enter into the state, you've done all the magic, you've done all the rituals, you've done all the utterances, you've dialed up the right number, now what do you do? I mean, what are you supposed to do? I find this fascinating. At this point, the Chaldean oracles say, it's now time to be silent. It's now time to wait. So remember the appearance of Hecate, the churning of the clouds and the lightning shining forth and her appearing. Well, you're supposed to be kind of standing there waiting, not doing any activities, just waiting for it. Kind of reminds me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You guys ever seen that movie? Where the aliens arrive, right? This great epiphany, they're all just standing there. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to wait in silence. Silence open to being filled and non-thought. Just taking in what is appearing before you. There are, of course, various other kinds of initiation rituals. I do want to bring up one is called the 7 rays ritual, which is a purifying one that I don't have time to talk about. It's sometimes connected to Helios, the sun, and sometimes it's connected to Jupiter. There's so much more, but of course, we are running out of time. I just remember, because I know you're interested in learning more. The best source, part 2 says Cal, the best source is a work I have right over here. It's called On the Mysteries, and it's by Iamblichus. You can get that online. I highly recommend it. And a lot of what I talked to you about today is in Iamblichus, so much, because he was very much a follower of the Chaldean Oracles. In fact, I want to have a quote from him, because here we go, another one. He lived between 245 to 325 CE. He embraced the Chaldean Oracles as his own. He declares these mysteries as, quote, that, let's see here it is. Such gods are true divinities, are alone givers of good, alone associated with good men, and with those who are purified by the sacerdotal art, and from these remove all vice and every passion. When these also impart their light, that which is evil and at the same time demoniacal, vanish before the more excellent natures, in the same manner as darkness when light is present, nor is it able to disturb theurgists in the smallest degree, who receive from this light every virtue, obtain worthy manners, become orderly and elegant in their actions, are liberated from passions and purified from every disorderly motion and from atheical and unholy conduct. But those who are themselves flagarious, and who leap, as it were, to things of a divine nature in an illegal and disorderly manner. These through there, and it kind of goes on. He's saying it's not going to work. Basically, you have to have a sense of decorum. You have to have a sense of respect before these deities. There is one other person I want to bring up. And again, I won't have time to talk about her, but I just want to bring her up. And there was somebody who did follow the Chaldean Oracles, who was very famous. And her name is Sosipatra, Sosipatra. I'll just give you a little summary. She was born in Asia near Ephesus by the Kesta River. She had just reached the age of 5 when 2 old men, both being past the prime of life, but one was older than the other, and carrying ample wallets and dressed in garments of skin, made their way to a country estate belonging to Sosipatra's parents. The old men, on receiving Greek hospitality and a place at a Greek table, were smitten and captivated by the exceeding beauty and charm of this little girl by the name of Sosipatra. And they asked her to hand over this child so they can truly guide her, and at least up to their 5th year, so there'd be no fear. And they agreed to this. So the girl's father agreed to this. And what happened is it turned out that they were experts in the Chaldean art. Slowly and reluctantly, for such was perhaps the will of heaven, I'm reading from the source, they revealed to him that they were, the father, initiates in the lore called Chaldean. And even this they told enigmatically and with bent heads. He, the father, did indeed believe that he had fallen in with gods in the likeness of strangers. And so she had been initiated, mystic symbols given. Also, books were placed in Sosipatra's chest, and she was transformed. In fact, she became very famous as a Chaldean Neoplatonist philosopher, and she had so many different kinds of gifts. But in fact, in many cases, she was viewed as being clairvoyant. She was able to discern the mysteries. She was able to supposedly know what happened to a person before they arrived to visit her. She saw all their thoughts and ideas being able to permeate the mind, because she entered into this supposed state where she became like unto like. She became the focus. She became, in a sense, the object and the subject become one. And so she was very famous in ancient times to have these special powers, to spread this message of the Chaldean Oracles. Once again, I wish I could tell more about her, but she is very important and hardly talked about at all. So where do we go from here? I gave you quite a bit in the way of details concerning the Chaldean Oracles, on how they work, on why they work, and their legacy. I do want to say that the Chaldean Oracles did become popular even into the Christian era, and they continued amongst Byzantine philosophers, and then connected also to Platon in the 15th century. And then from there, Platon brought the idea of the Chaldean Oracles to the Western world, and is connected to, of course, the arcane mysteries that are mixed together with Platonism and the occult sciences of not only the Renaissance, but moving to the Enlightenment and even today. But the Chaldean Oracles, again, are mysteries. And so how does one conclude a mystery? The best way that I can think of is to understand that there is something that is beyond our understanding, to realize that there is a limit in knowledge. and that we have to allow ourselves to become vulnerable, open to many possibilities. I think it would be hubris of us to think that we know it all, that we are the crown of the universe. And in many ways, science has demonstrated that we are just on the periphery of this galaxy amongst multitudes of galaxies. And I think that we need this kick in our complacency. We need to understand that there is mystery out there, and we need to be open to that possibility. You'll hear these stories and you'll think to yourself, these are fantasies that arrive from these ancient minds through these perspectives of philosophy, of Zoroastrianism, of Neoplatonism, of Stoicism, right? But the reality is, you've also noticed in this conversation that we've had tonight that there is a measure of, wait a minute, there's an aha moment. And that is, if you hadn't noticed, the Chaldean oracles are not only about not knowing ideas that are beyond us. We do as much as we can through these various symbols, and then we have to wait in silence. But also it encourages a special form of mysticism that is wild, that is emotional, and it is filled with this idea of that we should take that step of faith, that we should hope to reach something greater than ourselves, that we're part of something enormous and exciting and full of splendor, and that this realm is filled with this binding agent that attracts everything together, and that is love. Thank you so much. All right.
That was really good. Yes.
Here we go. Was that fun?
Yes.
So, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, part two. Yeah, it's one of the most complicated belief systems to describe, and yet some of the answers are so simple. So, and I think in my mind, I think it's interesting that love is so important within this perspective, because we always teach Greek and Roman philosophy as being without that kind of passion, and yet here it is, and you're thinking, well, it's a Stoic idea. It's not, or it's not personal. It's pretty personal. It's very personal for each theurgist. In fact, it's extremely personal. And you have to, and so if you read the writings of Iamblichus is the perfect one. These deities, and as well as Julian, right, and Maximus of Ephesus and Proclus, you realize that these theurgists, these philosophers, have a personal kind of connection with these deities. We know, of course, Julian, who's known either as the apostate or the great, he had a special connection with Hecate, right? So in connection to some of these mysteries, making the Hecate statue or image come to life, so to speak. And we talked about that, right? But did he make it come to life? Well, the reality is, no, he just invited the spirit of Hecate to arrive, and then she filled that statue. See, it's all about invitation. Margie says, at one point you use virginity and virtue as if they were the same. At what point in history did these two ideas become conflated? Good question. So virginity and virtue, it's the idea of having a sense of decorum, a sense of holding yourself. That's the best way to put it. Holding yourself, right? Not holding yourself back, but holding yourself. And then, of course, as time goes on, but also the word virginity is a slippery slope, because it also moves into the physical realm, but we're not talking about the physical realm when we discuss the Chaldean oracles. We're talking about the non-physical realm. But if you're talking about the physical realm, then you have this idea of what's a virgin. Is it one that has is faithful to one, or has never been touched, and we go down that slippery slope. But this kind of virginity is a little different. Hope that makes sense. This is the idea of her energetic flow is that she is releasing, but she's also holding back. And there's this idea of descending and ascending. Descending, ascending. She is, remember, Hecate, we emanate out from Hecate into the realm of the cosmic soul. We emanate down through her, and the emanations move forward, but we also have to move back. So the ladder has to go both ways. It moves down. I should say shoots and ladders. That's probably even the best way to look at it. Let's look at like shoots and ladders. Okay, you guys ever play that game, right? So basically, the way down is like a chute, the emanations, right? Pretty fast. But the way up, it's like a ladder, because there has to be some effort for us to get back. And don't fall off the ladder. Don't walk underneath the ladder either. But is that helpful? So that's this idea. It's energetic conceptions. Yeah, virgin is a brand of olive oil, right? It sure is, right? Yeah, any other questions? Did you guys like the Ingus? Was that pretty cool? Moving through the supposed energetic blood vessels of the body of the cosmos. I think it's fascinating. What would be really fun, and I was contemplating doing this, is that this would be great as a drawn model. I've never seen the Chaldean oracles, its cosmology drawn out. Wouldn't that be fascinating? Because I have even more I skipped over that goes into the exact details of what this universe looks like as you move down, and who was there, and so thank you, Taffy. Thank you so much. Yeah, it would be fun to see that all drawn, because it's so hard to describe, because I see it all in my mind. I see the whole thing in my mind. It's just like, how do I explain it? So yes, any other questions? You guys see why that these oracles are pretty popular? You see why it was very empowering to people, because it wasn't the cold stoicism. It wasn't the denying Epicureanism. As much as live for the day kind of, it wasn't the Aristotelian perspectives, or even the pure Platonists. This is something where there's enough, there's enough Semitic feel to it. There's enough, does that make sense? There's a Middle Eastern feel to parts of it, where you still got to have emotion. It's just a different kind of emotion. That's Iamblichus, Adrian. Yeah, and it's right. I should walk over there. It's right over there behind me. But yeah. Just get Iamblichus on the mysteries, and you will be very happy. Just read that, and you're done. That gives you a whole blueprint of everything, more details than you ever would want, and it goes into the structure of this universe in detail. So, in fact, that's what I used for this talk. I figure a primary source is the best. I use Iamblichus and I use Proclus, and I combine that peanut butter and chocolate together. That's right. So, and together I got this. I don't know, Rhesus philosophy. But yeah, so you put together Proclus with Iamblichus, and you pretty well have the whole scope of what it's about. And they do preserve quotes verbatim from the oracles, so you're going to get that at the same time. In fact, I recommend, and this is really radical, I recommend skipping secondary sources at first. Why not just go straight to the primary source? Why not? Why not be daring? Take the risk, right? Was it Proclus who wanted to go to India to learn the old masters there? I don't know if it was Plotinus. Plotinus did, and Plotinus is, I'm showing my nerdiness. Plotinus was taught by Ammianus Saccas. Ammianus Saccas, the last name Saccas, is Shakyas, by the way. And he was a great teacher. He's the last Middle Platonist and the first Neoplatonist. He's the one who taught Plotinus everything, and he was partly Indian in background, and he lived in Alexandria. Look it up, Google, there it is. Or just look up the primary sources. Yeah, so you go, well, Plotinus reminds me of these ideas from the East. Well, that's because his teacher has an Indian background, even though he's living in Alexandria with an Indian last name, taught him these conceptions and ideas. And in fact, a nice challenge would be, and this book, I do have a book that talks a little bit about it, but a nice challenge would be, is take ideas of the Indic philosophy during the 3rd and 4th century and parallel it directly to Plotinus and the Neoplatonists. And you're going to have one of the biggest epiphanies of all. You're going to go, wait a second, it's almost exactly the same. And you're going, yeah. And you felt that in the Chaldean Oracles.
Abhinavagupta from Kashmir, I believe, was around the same time period. And that all of this, I was kind of anticipating the next steps. It felt like it's like, oh, like that's Shakti and Shiva and the relationship between them. And we're talking about like Kundalini and the different chakras and
Spiral energy.
And the Naris are like the different energy centers, and it's all there and still being practiced, which is kind of a trip.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you also see the connections of the triad and the limit Ein Sof. You see it with the Kabbalah. So you're saying, well, this is like the Kabbalah too. It's like, yeah, well, that's very Semitic, but also has Middle Platonic influence. So you're seeing this idea connecting too. And you realize that there is, people always think that the trade routes are so far away from India. Did you guys know that when the Great Railroad was built from the city of Ephesus, which is on the Ionian coast, to Persepolis, which is Parthia, did you know that by wheel transit, it's not wheel transit, sorry, by once that way, by the Pony Express, through 111 postal stations, 111, yeah, I memorized that, you could get all the way from the Aegean to Persepolis in 2 weeks by Pony Express. That was common knowledge. In fact, you take a look, you'll see that all the time mentioned in ancient works. The Romans talking because the Pony Express was important. Of course, that 2 weeks seemed a long time, very long time if there's like a battle, going on in Parthia, and 2 weeks later, it's like, hey, we lost, no, and they're coming, they have the plague, but Lucius theirs. But the point is that still, that's fast, seriously. Did you know that it took another week from there to go to India? So India was 3 weeks away by Pony Express through that same road. I know that road. Is this fascinating? Did you guys know that the gymnosophists, those are the Indic philosophy, that they all the time walked on this road? These gymnosophists of the Indic philosophy went to Rome. They met with Augustus Caesar. They met with Tiberius. Did you know that there's a section of Alexandria that's where those who are from India used to live, because they figured out under Claudius the monsoons? And so, from going from there through the Red Sea all the way to, pretty quickly. That's why you find all these Roman coins along the coast there, right? And so you have also, I've actually seen the tombs of these Indic philosophers in Western Turkey, along the Eastern Mediterranean, as well as Greece. You see the names there, the gymnosophists. By the way, there's one that burned himself alive at the Olympic Games. Everybody knew that. And a guy by the name of Philostratus wrote about that, but also other writers wrote about the fact that this person, who is a follower of the Indic or the Indian philosophy, burned himself alive, because it's a sense of ascension. Is this fascinating? So this is common knowledge. Gymnosophists, they call them gymnosophists, were all the time walking across the Roman Empire. A little bit of trivia, one of those roads from the Royal Road splinters off and goes down to Palestine, which is interesting because it goes just below Beth Shen. You know, if you know where that is in Israel, Beth Shen, south of Galilee, and goes to a place called Sepphoris, which is very close to Nazareth. That's, you know, you could take that road and go to India. Did you guys know that? So yeah, so people always think Jesus went to India. I was like, well, India could have gone right to Jesus because it's right there. And we have tons of writings. Did you know that Indian history was written out by a Greek named Megasthenes who was living in India and wrote it out? He wrote all about it, you know, what life was like. So even ever since Alexander the Great, after that was common knowledge. Did you know that the Indus River was not, after Alexander the Great's troops with the other direction went away? Did you realize that the Greeks stayed there for the next 2.5 centuries and built cities all the way to Bactria, which of course is Afghanistan? So did you know that the early Indic writings that in that particular region, the Gandhara region, were used Greek letters? But so if you know Greek letters, you can actually sound out the words during the period of time of the 3rd, 2nd, 1st, all the way to the 5th century CE. So for about 600 years, you could figure it out. Did you know that Ashoka, he had his inscriptions, part of them, his edicts were in Greek. So yeah, it's a small world. So yeah, so we go, oh my goodness, I can't believe, these ideas, the Indic ideas are, these philosophers, people at that time were all, it's a guy next door. It's a guy walking down the street, it's a cosmopolitan world filled with people of all different walks of life. That's called the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire went all the way to the Persian Gulf at one point, hello. And of course the Red Sea. And they had direct connection with India there. So you're going to see that, but also for this talk, not just, you can see little perks of karma. You guys probably saw that, but you also can see in a big way the Semitic connections. You could see very much not just Babylonian, but Syrian elements of understanding the gods. And I love that you have they can't make up their mind between having father, mother, son, right? Or is it father, son, and then spirit? So there's this kind of like this, we don't know what to do. And so what the Chaldean Oracles do, which I love, it's very Semitic, which I absolutely love, is like, we'll do both. It's like both. Yeah. So he's married to, she's married to the second principal, but also, his mother at the same time. Done. That's like, whoa, okay, that takes care of that. You guys having fun? Any other questions? All right. Well, I think I covered it, maybe, And I have done a talk on India before, if you're interested. So I think, right? Yeah. Margie?
Oh, I'd have to check. You've done a lot.
Yeah.
Seems like you might have, but I don't remember if it's one I recorded or what.
I must have. So
yeah. By the time you get done talking, my brain is full and it's hard to think of anything else because everything is all spinning around trying to find purchase in my head.
So you are beyond words now. Are you
Sort of.
or the double? Are you the odd or odd? Okay.
Yes, we've done one on the deities, female deities in India.
Okay, but did we do one though? I thought we did one of the. No, we did. We did do a talk on India, I believe. Yeah, I think we did.
I know we did.
Yeah, so it's out there. All right. Any other?
There was an Ashoka, and the India meets Greece. We did.
Yeah, that's it. That's Ashoka.
Yeah.
I did talk about Ashoka, India meets Greece, and I go into those sources. So,
Yes.
but it's interesting because you're going to find sources on India in places you won't least expect. Like you have Philostratus in his life of Polyaenus of Tyana. He goes to India in the talk. You know, you're going to have a Diochristouso. We'll talk about a lot about connections with the gymnosophists, and you know, it permeates Greek writings. It's just that there needs to be. Here's another little gift. Anybody who's listening, there needs to be a source book on India in relation to the Greco-Roman world.
Mhm.
That would be a really good one and it'd sell. And so when anybody's source book, all it is just all the quotes from the Greeks and Romans about India and going through that and the philosophy and ideas, as well as putting archaeology. That I buy that book. It doesn't exist. So, but I would get it.
Maybe you should write it
Something else for me to
in
do
your spare time.
my spare time, right? So, yeah. So there you go. So I'm sure somebody heard that, listening, going, okay, I can do that. All right. Well, I think I've covered it. If there's no questions, I will go into the. I will ascend. I will go ahead and call out the Ingus and do the rituals. And no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. You have a talk on Indian goddesses, did you say?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to look that one up. Do you know what it's titled by chance, Terry?
Let's see.
Goddesses, maybe.
I
There's
should
one
be able to
called
find it.
India Meets Greece, exchanges of religion along the trade routes.
It's not that one.
Not
I've
that
watched-
one? Okay.
I've watched that one. I haven't seen the Indian goddesses one in looking through the archives.
The funny thing is, I do have a talk on that, but I'm not sure. Have I presented it?
We have Akbar. Let's see.
Maybe I haven't presented it here. So
I'm not sure if it's in the archives. I've
I think you're right, Ali. I think it may be not there.
spent a lot of time watching your old videos.
I actually have a long talk on even just Kali that we haven't. That would be pretty great to do.
Well, I
would
think
love
it's
hear
time
that
to
one.
redo it, right?
Well, I haven't presented it here.
Okay, yeah.
And I did research in Trinidad, Trinidadian Kali. And by the way, I wrote an article on that one in an academic journal that's not my own, and it's published. So I have a published article on Kali. so I don't know, maybe we could do a talk on Kali.
We did do the one on the goddesses, but it wasn't recorded, just for your information.
Okay.
You were asking about that.
So I did one on the goddesses. But maybe just one focusing on Kali would be good, because again, I could just dig up my article,
Yeah, I think it would be fascinating if I get a vote. Like, yes, please.
And I'll talk about not only Kali as worshipped in India, but I talk about Kali as worshipped in the Caribbean. So
Interesting.
I talk about the localized forms of worship, which I think that sounds kind of fun to me.
Do you talk about the Black Marys at all in that one?
I sure do. In connection to Kali, by the way. Yes.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, I go there. Yeah, I go into the amalgamations, although that sounds like a terrible word. But yeah, it's good. Yeah. So I'm doing divine feminine concepts coming up. Oh, that should be good on the 22nd. So yeah, within Christianity and Judaism, sure, we'll continue doing that. And then what am I doing after that?
The ancient Christian magic
Ancient Christian
on July 13. I'm putting that in right now.
Yeah, I guess maybe we could do Kali after that. I mean, I think you'll have an audience. I mean, people know Kali pretty well.
You don't have to convince me. Just as long as you want to schedule it, we can schedule it for late July.
Well, it throws me off because you think that we would have thought of that a long time ago. And the other thing,
the goddess is the one that included her, but
yeah,
it wasn't her on her alone.
yeah, I just might focus on her. Yeah. So I mean, it's done. So it's all doing work.
Kali, Hecate, Isis,
Yeah.
Artemis.
Yeah.
They're all just different faces, right?
Well, it's interesting because Hecate has this more of this has a really nice feel in the Chaldean Oracles. That's what I like about it. She's not. I mean, is she mistress of magic? Of course she is, but it's a different kind of magic. It's I didn't bring it up. Oh, yeah, in the Chaldean Oracles, it talks about the fact that as remember I talked about her giving and, her emanating and taking back. I forgot to mention that the Chaldean Oracles, it talks about the Persephone aspect, that she was there to go and descend. She descended with Persephone with the torch, and that she ascended back with the torch, and that concept was placed in the idea of the oracles. That's the reason why she has this energetically. She she emanates out, and that'd be Persephone going below the earth. Does that make sense? And then her coming back again, and that's guiding her back. So as core, yes. So, but they brought. I just skipped that paragraph from my notes. So
You cannot cover everything.
I covered it now.
You covered a lot.
So it's all recorded, I think, maybe.
It is indeed, yes.
All right.
And it will go up tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to stay on top of it.
Tomorrow. Yes.
Tomorrow.
Sarah says the image of giving and holding back also hints at Artemis's bow. Oh, that's right.
Ooh, that's cosmic.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Well, there's lots of interesting applications that there's a subtext that I try to stay away from, but there's some interesting ideas that are there. That swirly whirlies, that really they actually use that in Greek. They use those two words that in the ancient Greek. It's like whirl and swirl is different.
When you were talking about that, it was so hard not to think about Kundalini stuff, like the two, like the Pingala Nari on the right hand side and the Indra Nari, and the I forget the name of the one that connects in the center. And then pranayama is very much about like the upward and outward flow, and then the inward and downward flow with breath and connecting them, and then the space between the two, and the consciousness that is the observer being like the one ultimate thing is all like Advaita Vedanta, and like sounds like it's straight out of Abhinavagupta. It's such a I'd say it's such a trip, but it like makes sense that there is such a deep connection there. What's a trip is that there isn't as much research or talk or discussion about that connection because it seems so obvious.
Yeah, it's very obvious, and of course the conflating of subject and object, and the idea of unknowing, of releasing our mind, getting to the edge of knowledge and opening up like a vessel with this energy moving through us. We have this feeling of Sufism too. You have this, Rumi, right? You have this idea of this energy that spins, right? A lot of spinning, right? Moving through. But yeah.
And when you kept referring to her as the power, and that's the literal translation of Shakti as power, and that is how the feminine is personified in that, and it translates, the Greek and the Sanskrit translate way better together than it does to English. I'm constantly bouncing back and forth between the two to find words to make sense of it in my head.
And the Greek and the Sanskrit are closer together than English is, and because they're all Indo-European languages. So yeah, it makes sense. There's more of a coordination between the two. So absolutely. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. State of being, Usia. So I think I will fold up for the night. I did eat something, so that's good. So a little bit, but not much. So so riding this energy, I'll be rising up. Take care. Thank you, Cal. Look forward to seeing you again, and talk to you soon.